Believe it or not, I was 16, and it was at the end of World War II, and I enlisted in the Marine Corps at the very end because I really felt like I wanted to go. I know it was always in my blood, you know, I wanted to be a part of it. And so I enlisted at that time, and I lied about my age, which came back to haunt me later on. But that's what I did. And the squadron that I was assigned to was VMO-6, which is one of the oldest squadrons in the Marine Corps. This squadron functioned back in Nicaragua, believe it or not, you know, flying during the troubles down there. VMO-6, and that's an acronym for V in the Marine Corps stands for heavier than air, M is Marine, and O is observation. So it's heavier than air Marine Observation Squadron 6. VMO-6 was deployed to Korea immediately after the beginning of the war. Korea determined the position of the helicopter as far as combat is concerned for then and now. Only now it's jumped way ahead and you have gunships. We had no armament, we had no guns on the ship at all. I worked on the line with the helicopters. I was an aircraft crew chief. At that time, we started to use the helicopter for artillery air observation. They could take the small aircraft helicopter and I want to call it a Cessna. It was similar to a Cessna, and you could fly over the battlefield, and you had a spotter in the back seat, which was a trained artillery air observer, and he could look out with his binoculars and spot targets from the air. Then they found out that the generals could be asked to be moved around, the one who were fighting the battle. They could get up and go look at the field. Instead of looking at a map, they can compare the map with what they're seeing in reality. Of course, the enemy began to realize that what that little plane was doing. In the beginning, they weren't too concerned about it because it wasn't bombing them, it wasn't strafing them, it wasn't doing anything. So if an aircraft could get up above, they didn't have any place to hide. You could see them, and you could see what movements were, what the Chinese were doing. This is before the Chinese. We had just the North Koreans to deal with. And then after a while, you could see the troops coming up, and so they were right in the open, so the commanding general of our forces could look and say, we knew what we were up against. It wasn't that you could do anything about it, but you knew at least you could fortify those areas in which they were intending to attack. We lost some people because the aircraft was small, it was unarmed. The first pilot we lost, it was pretty hard for us to deal with because, you know, we felt we were going to be pretty safe. I think this was the feeling anyway that we had, you know, well, they're not going to bother with us because we're not doing any damage to them. No, they found out what we did. And I remember distinctly at that time even there being so many children among the refugees. This was the hard part for all of us, I can tell you that. And you tried to feed them, you tried to give them stuff. We would find the littlest ones, the ones who couldn't fend for themselves. But to give them anything, you had to put them in the Jeep and take them with you and give it to them and eat so they could eat it while you were there. Because if you gave them something, the bigger ones would take it from them, you know, so they had nothing. And it was not uncommon to find at the time there would be young children frozen to the road on the side of the roadway because that was their only hope. They had no parents. It was wrong what was going on. It shouldn't have been happening. I personally, I know why I was there. I have no doubt in my mind. And if people say, well, I don't know why do you have to go to war? Well, sometimes I believe it's necessary, but that's debatable to each individual's way of seeing things. I think that we have to remember why those wars were fought, why so many people were willing to go and fight in the war. That's the memorial, is remembering why we did that. It's not that it happened, but why we did it. And forget about everything else, that there was a whole world there that was salvaged. You can argue all you want whether that ended the war. Obviously it didn't, but it saved somebody. You know, and I know the people that I'm with, they feel like that. It was a very important thing.